Now, the One Ontario project on the list is the Darlington Small Modular Reactor. It will make Canada the first G7 country in the world to have a small modular nuclear reactor. When it's up and running, it will provide power to 300,000 homes, But again, that's the only Ontario project on this first list, and on the second list as well. So how does the province feel about that? Well, joining me now is Ontario's Minister of Energy and Mines, Stephen Lecce. Thank you so much for being here, Minister.
Thanks so much, Mike. Good to be on.
So we know that you're happy with the federal government for supporting the Darlington reactor program, but you've also said that they didn't go far enough. What other support were you looking for?
Look, it's true. The Darlington nuclear, the small modular reactors, is a great achievement for Canada. I mean, we are ahead of the French, the British, the Americans, the Italians, the Japanese. We're building the first in the G7 right here in Ontario, a project that can create upwards of 20,000 jobs and add 40 billion to the Canadian economy. It is a solid investment in Canada's energy future. But in order to achieve energy superpower status, as the Prime Minister speaks about and our premiers are committed to delivering, we've got to get in the game of large-scale nuclear. We have proposed in Ontario, in a place called Port Hope, just east of Toronto, to build what could represent as the largest nuclear reactor on Earth, 10,000 megawatts of power. And we need the federal government to explicitly commit to helping us build out this massive nuclear expansion that could represent, according to the conference board, $235 billion to the Canadian economy. I mean, I cannot imagine another way to infuse economic activity and create 10,500 jobs, to be specific, than a project like this. So yeah, look, we welcome the investment in the small modular reactor. It's a first step, but it's simply a first step. It cannot be the end. We represent half of Canada's GDP nearly. We want to see more commitment as we build out clean energy and clean Canadian tech for this country and for the world.
So I just want to take a step backwards, because we know before this official list come out, when that one came out, there was also a leak ahead of time, and your Premier, Doug Ford, called that other list not good enough for the province. So how underwhelming was this announcement for your government then?
Well, look, I mean, it represents one of five of our most consequential priority projects on there. I'm also the Minister responsible for mines, and there is no explicit commitments to the Ring of Fire. I mean, look, Mike, it's not just about the money. We are asking the feds to invest in helping us build the roads, but perhaps more than anything, it's about market certainty. If we want to get the Ring of Fire, which represents, we're talking about a project that could add $22 billion to the economy and 70,000 Canadian jobs, we need the feds to end the duplicative nature of their assessments. The First Nation have led an environmental assessment, and the feds slapped on their own assessment, the exact same one. So we're asking them, yes, for financial support for sure, but we're also asking them to help us create the regulatory environment to get to yes. The Impact Assessment Act, which is 5 years, longer than anyone else in the industrialized world, they committed to going down to 2. So our message to the feds is, you want to build large-scale nuclear, you want to do large mines, you want to do large infrastructure, ports and bridges and highways, you got to get the impact assessment out of the way. And the 2-year time frame is a much better step forward. And so we're telling the feds, yes, invest in Ontario, step up the commitment, but also you got to work on creating the conditions for these projects to happen in timely manners. Otherwise, we're waiting decades to do the big things, and the Prime Minister wants to do big things. Well, so do we. But there are a lot of barriers, federal barriers, that are impeding our success in this respect.
I think a lot of viewers out there and some political watchers will look at this and sort of think that your government has gone out of its way to really cozy up to this federal Liberal government. Yet you didn't get what you were looking for in this tranche, and frankly, it doesn't seem like like you're going to get what you want in the next tranche. So is your government going to change your posture towards the federal Liberals going forward?
Look, the Premier has been collaborative with the Prime Minister in the national interest. We're in a crisis. We're in a war with the United States and other geopolitical adversaries. it's very important that we work together. But that also means keeping them accountable. And we made clear large-scale nuclear represents a huge economic opportunity for Canadians, thousands of jobs, hundreds of billions to the economy. You cannot achieve nation building or energy superpower without a project like this. So the Premier, I think, will continue to maintain good relations with the PM, but we got to keep the feds to account as well. They have a lot of skin in the game when it comes to Ontario. And so we want to believe that there's a path to getting these projects named in the next fall list that comes out. And we're going to be speaking very vigorously to the federal government today and every day to make the case that you cannot become an energy superpower unless you unlock the Ring of Fire, unless you build net new large-scale Canadian technology nuclear, unless you build the ports and likewise the pipelines that help build energy sovereignty and energy security.
Minister, with respect, do you think that your premier has been keeping this government to account, considering that Doug Ford, ahead of the First Minister's meeting, had the Prime Minister stay at his cottage? He has spoken in the past. He has said, I'll hand the keys to of a business over to the Prime Minister. He'll give everything he possibly can. He said that in the past. So do you think that the tact hasn't worked and that it should change? You say you've held him to account, but that doesn't sound like the words of somebody that has been really going after this Prime Minister when you consider that Danielle Smith has been pushing back the whole way and she seemingly got what she wants.
Well, I think Western provinces want a pipeline that hasn't been achieved just yet. But I think
no, but in fairness,
dialogue.
Minister, she does on the second list does have the Pathways Plus program, which is something that she has spoken glowingly about in the last 24 hours.
Yeah, and we've got a $20 billion small modular reactor project on the top of the list. So I think all regions of Canada have some incremental wins, but obviously there's more advocacy to be done. And the Premier has been collaborative, working with all provinces, all territories, and the feds to deliver and protect jobs in the country. But that does not take away from the point that if we want to achieve and create jobs and grow our economy and safeguard ourselves from threats from the U.S., we've got to work together. And so the Premier, I think, has actually delivered quite a bit because of this relationship. Infrastructure investments in major highways, major infrastructure projects of consequence to the country and the province are happening in Ontario. Even on law and order, the Premier has been so loud in advocating to the feds constructively that they got to get on with changing the bail system and likewise ending some of these lax laws that have encouraged or enabled some of the recidivism. The Prime Minister, to his credit, said in his press conference, the Premier raised it with me as a matter of priority and they committed to some reform. And we will, Mike, hold them to account on delivering that. So the Premier has been able to extract a lot from the feds. But I guess the message today is it's just not enough. It's a good step forward on one piece of the pie, but on large-scale nuclear and small modular reactors and likewise pipelines, we want to see more action. And that's why this fall is a critical time for the federal government to deliver on their word to the people of Ontario, to the largest economy in the nation, that they're going to actually back projects that create jobs and make us a more self-reliant economy here at home.
But Minister, in fairness, this list was based on proposals submitted by the premiers. So do you think that Premier Ford didn't do a good enough job trying to convince the federal government the importance of those other projects that you put forward? Is some of the onus not on your government that you weren't able to convince the federal government to make it a priority?
Well, I think the Prime Minister recognizes both an economic perspective and on the political side how important these projects are. And I think the federal government.
But in fairness, Minister, they're not on the list. They're not on either of those lists. So did your government not do a good enough job trying to convince the federal government that they should be on either of those lists?
Well, I think it's the first tranche of a list, right? We recognize it's the first 5 of potentially upwards of 30. This is a good discussion to have once we see the full list. Today, we have one major priority achieved with many more to go. And we need the feds to heed our advice that in order to grow an economy and safeguard our jobs and become an energy superpower, you need to reinvest in Ontario's nuclear and critical minerals sectors. And so we're going to keep them accountable. We're going to keep working with them to deliver the funding. In the meantime, we've delivered one big win on a project that can create 18,000 jobs in Ontario, and likewise infuse tens of billions of dollars to our economy. I mean, these small modular reactors are not just for Ontario. We're helping to build them in Alberta and Saskatchewan and New Brunswick, in Poland and Eastern Europe. It is a national program with international impact. The service center of that SMR is going to be built in Ontario. We're going to service the entire SMR fleet. So it really does have a lot of opportunity for the province and tons of jobs. The premier has been vigorous in maintaining close relations with all the premiers because we have the same aspiration, which is to fight for our jobs and to stand up for Canada. But we want to do it in collaboration. And we obviously expect a ton more from the federal government in the next iteration of their list unveiling in the next month.
Okay, Minister, we're going to have to leave it there. I appreciate your time. Ontario Minister for Energy and Mines, Stephen Lecce. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.